Hello and welcome to our lesson on Mishnayot Shabbat. Today we're going to learn Mishnah concept number 3, which is every day before evening we must pray Mincha, the afternoon prayer. However, in order to make sure that we don't miss the time, it is forbidden to start any activity which might take a long time until after you pray Mincha. So basically, if the Mishnah Bet, the Mishnayot Shabbat, is going to list a whole bunch of activities which may take a long time. But that's not the limit. If you know in your daily schedule that there's a certain activity which may take you a long time and you'll miss Mincha, you should not do that until after you pray Mincha first. The first activity mentioned by the Mishnah in Mishnah Bet in Mishnayot Shabbat. Lo yeshev adam lefnei hasapar. A person should not sit in front of a barber. Samuch la mincha, close to the time of mincha. Ad sheyitpalel, until he has prayed mincha first. Now you might say, well, I have so much time to pray mincha the whole afternoon. What is the issue of sitting in front of the barber? Well, even in these days when you have electric razors, and especially in those days where you had scissors, if the barber's material breaks, the barber's scissors or shaver breaks, what ends up happening is there is no way you're going to leave that barbershop looking with like that, with a half-finished haircut, right? Imagine he cut half of your hair, right? And then his scissors broke, or his whatever, even electric clipper broke. You would not be wanting to leave that barbershop. And you may miss mincha while you're waiting for him to fix his scissors or get a new clipper or whatever it is. So therefore, that's one of the activities mentioned. The second activity forbidden by the Mishnah is lo yikanes adam lamerchatz. A person should not go into a bathhouse. As you see in the bottom of page 14, it's not a bath like you have in your house, like a bathroom. In those days, they didn't have such a fancy room with indoor plumbing in every house. So they had special houses that they had, one of them in the whole town, where people could go to take a hot bath. And they would do this, it wouldn't be, right? They could wash with cold water every day if they wanted, but hot water was a luxury. So they had to go to a special bathhouse that was heated up, and people would go in there and they would take a bath in the hot water. And what would happen is, because it was so hot, their body could get all steamed up, but they would have to sit down in a chair afterwards to rest so that they don't faint from being nauseous. And what would happen is that they may get so heated up and feel a little sick afterwards, make a little dizzy, that they may not remember that it's mincha time. So even though technically you could probably go in and out of the bathhouse very quickly and still have time for mincha, we're worried that the heat may cause a person to be dizzy and miss mincha time. Here's another interesting one where we don't really see in our towns. Velo leborsaki, not a tannery. What's a tannery? Look in the bottom of page 14 is a picture of a factory that you make leather. How do you make leather? The skin is taken off the animal, and the skin definitely does not look nice to make a leather wallet or something right away, or a pair of shoes. What do they have to do? They have to take it and soak it in a pool of chemicals, usually lime, that removes all the hair and makes it soft, gets rid of anything that's, animal fats and things that you don't want on the leather. And afterwards, they take it out and they have to clean off the leather and dry it and sand it down to make it into nice, smooth, processed leather. Well, that takes a long time to deal with leather. It's hard work. And the problem is that if the leather stays in the chemicals too long, you can get holes in the leather, or the leather can lose its color. So therefore, there's a tanner, is a person who does this job, has to really be careful with the leather. So what happens if he goes before mincha into his borsiki, into his tannery, and he notices that some of the skins need to be taken out of the solution, and he's got to go put on protective clothing not to get burnt by the chemicals, and he's got to go and start lifting heavy sheets of leather, and that's going to be a big pain. It's going to take a long time, and he definitely may miss mincha. Also, v'lo lechol, he should not start a meal, because he may have a nice long meal and enjoy himself and relax and get schmoozing, and sometimes meals go quick, and sometimes you can have a nice long meal and talk with people, and it can take hours. V'lo ledin, and you should not start a court case. If there's judges, they should not start a court case, even if it's only to give a verdict in a court case, which is the end, which should really take quick. They should not do that. Why? Because the guilty person may say, wait, I have some more evidence, and that may take very long to argue with the judges and lawyers and everybody, and basically you may miss mincha. What happens if you started? If in all these cases, if you started and you still have plenty of time to finish to mincha, in other words, technically, right, you started the court case, or you started with the tannery or the meal, and you have time to finish those activities and still pray mincha, ein mafsikin, you don't have to stop. So it's only that you shouldn't start those, but if you did start them already and you do have time, then you have to stop. Obviously, if you don't have time, you should stop and pray mincha. By the way, our commentaries explain, when is it considered that you started? Right? What if you remembered right away? So they say that if you're by the barber and they put the barber put his apron around you, to catch the hair, it doesn't get on your clothes, or if he went to the bathhouse, right, when he took off his shirt, not his coat, but his actual shirt, his which is closest to his flesh, he took off his garment that's right onto his flesh, and a tannery, when he puts on the special apron, when he ties on the special shoulder apron for protection, a meal is considered begun when you wash your hands, and a court case, a Jewish court case in Bet Din, is considered begun when the dayanim, when the judges put on a talit. In a Jewish court, the dayanim would put on a talit before their judgment. Now the next halacha does not really apply to all of us. It's a very special halacha which applies to very special people. There were some people like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai who used to learn Torah all day, and they used to be teachers of Torah and students of Torah, and that was it. They didn't waste time doing anything else. They didn't even work. They didn't do anything. That was their total occupation. They were 24/7 involved in learning Torah. Now, because these people have such a status in the Jewish nation that their teaching of Torah and their learning of Torah is considered a very holy thing. Of course, it's holy when any Jew learns Torah, but when you have such people who their whole life is Torah, the question is, do they have to stop learning Torah, which is so holy, to do mitzvot, regular mitzvot that other people do? So the Mishnah tells you, Mafsikin likrot kriyat Shema. These great sages, they have to stop and read kriyat Shema. Ve'ein mafsikin l'tfilah. But they don't have to stop to pray the Amidah. Very interesting. So if, technically speaking, if they're in the middle of their Torah study and they're one of those who are a 24/7 Torah student, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I don't think any of us are on that level, but they only have to stop to say Kriyat Shema, which is accepting God's kingship, and they don't have to do it for the Amidah. By the way, the Gemara tells a story, you know how we put our hands over our eyes when we do Shema? Where did that come from? The Gemara mentions a story that the students of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Yehuda the prince, the author of the Mishnah, were once watching him give his Torah class at the time when you're supposed to say the Shema. And they noticed that they didn't see him stop the class to say Shema. So one of the students asked the other ones, hey, doesn't even our great rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, doesn't he have to stop and say Shema? So the other student explained to him, no, you missed it. When did you see during the class, Rebbe took his hand and he passed it over his eyes. While he passed his hand over his eyes, that was the time when he was saying Shema. You didn't realize, you didn't understand what he was doing. He was saying Shema Yisrael when he put his hand on his eyes. So the commentaries on the Gemara discuss why did he put his hand on his eyes. There's different opinions. One opinion was that he wanted to block off any distractions because he's sitting in front of a room of people giving a Torah lecture. He didn't want to see the people. He wanted to concentrate on Hashem, so he would put his hand on his eyes. Another opinion was that when you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, when you say the word Echad and you think about the Dalid, you're supposed to move your head forward to the east, left to the north, back to the west, and then right to the south. Why do you do this? Because, and you move your eyes also in these directions. Why do you do this? Because you're supposed to remember that Hashem is in all four directions. Hashem is everywhere. So basically, Rebbe was covering his eyes, so his students shouldn't watch his eyes moving all around. Wouldn't watch it, he's looking in all of the directions. So this is another opinion. But till this very day, we put our hand over our eyes when we say Shema to block out all distractions. And if you're careful if you have the custom to move your head, some people have the custom, some people don't have the custom, they do that as well.